if you have nothing to grow anything, then you can go out in your street and help planting trees and adopt a street tree, for example. You don't have to make it officially. I don't know if it is possible with the city government, but no one hinders you to say, that's my tree and I care for it and I bring him sometimes, bring the tree some water, whatsoever. So make this connection to other beings. That's so important.
She's a lady.
She's back.
She's a lady.
She's doing it again.
She's a lady who can help you with the talking with trees. She's a lady. Only maybe if there's a subject you accompany a walk, you'll probably find it on the Tree Lady Talk.
Yep, we're back. We are back, and we're back with a vengeance because we've come in with a huge one. Fourth season of Tree Lady Talks gets off with a big bang because it's Peter Wohlleben. Sharon's going to be talking to him about his new book and anything else that takes her fancy. And there's a couple of things in this which I think you'll find particularly interesting if you listen carefully. So I'm not going to say anything else. I'm just going to let her do her introductions, get on with it, and have a very nice chat with Peter, who's our most downloaded podcast of all time. So with that in mind, I'll hand you over.
So welcome again to Peter Wohlleben. We are so pleased to have you back on our podcast because you are our highest downloaded podcast and really interesting topic, and got lots of people talking about what trees are really up to. And so it's a real pleasure to have you here today to talk about your two new books. One is The Power of Trees, How Ancient Forests Can Save Us If We Let Them, and Our Little Farm, which is about your personal life with your wife and how you're near self-sufficient. But just for those who don't know you, and that seems incredible, you are a world-renowned veritable tree whisperer, you've been called. And major works of yours include The Hidden Life of Trees, The Inner Life of Animals, The Secret Wisdom of Nature, and two children's books, Can You Hear the Trees Talking?, Peter and the Tree Children, and the book that we spoke about previously, which was enthralling, The Heartbeat of Trees. So I love the beginning, the very first sentence in The Power of Trees. The future of forests and the future of humanity are inextricably entwined. Tell us why.
Yeah, first perhaps let's think about our brain. Our brain is as big as it is because of timber, because our ancestors made fire and they cooked their meals, and with those cooked meals they had more calories, more energy to develop a bigger brain. So our ancestors were in urgent need of timber, and that means that they lived in forest, not in the savannah, as often is suggested. And we have that still in our genes. For example, we are better in fighting bad molecules in campfire smoke, which causes cancer, I think around about 1,000 times better than Neanderthals, for example. And we are able to judge if a forest is good or bad, because in good forests our blood pressure sinks, and that is signaling our mind that, that's nice here, it's lovely, so we will settle down in the stable, well-functioning forest. So we have still senses, still up to date, to judge if a forest is in good condition.
I love that, and actually it entirely chimes with The Wood Age by Professor Roland Ennis, who goes right back to prehistory. Do you know of that work?
I've heard about that, but I haven't read it. But if we go even far back in history, we come to Alexander von Humboldt, the famous German scientist who worked worldwide in Europe, in Asia, in South and North America. And he found out what modern satellite research also says, that intact forests cool down the landscape, make it colder in summer times, an average around about 10 degrees Celsius in comparison to cities like London, for example, 15 degrees in average colder, and create their own rain clouds. So, and that's exactly what we are suffering in terms of climate change from, is that it gets warmer and it gets drier, and that's exactly what trees don't like. Luckily.
Exactly.
So, and the good news is we can have that back. We have so much people which are in love with trees, old trees. So the field is ready. The people are ready to let come back more trees into their life. And every single tree counts. A tree in your garden, for example, can make it in average 1 to up to 6 degrees colder, and it's not the shadow, it's the water evaporation from the leaves. It's like the trees are, let's say in human word, they are sweating like we do when we get too warm. So trees are our best companions in fighting climate change.
Oh, they absolutely are. And you start off in the book talking about some of the really clever strategies that trees use. Tell us about what happens when trees experience drought, the different coping mechanisms they have. Let's go a little bit deep into biology to begin with.
If trees are unexperienced in this, then they are shocked. And we saw that in Germany, for example, here in around our Forest Academy in 2020, when we have the severest drought ever. The unexperienced trees, they dropped off 1/3 of their leaves within days. And we saw thick layers of green leaves from beech and oak trees. And that was shocking for us too. We said, whoa, what's now happening in the forest? But that is learning in real time, tree learning in real time. And with the next drought in 2022, we saw that this didn't happen. So trees can change their water management. They knew, and we know, even when we say the trees knew, then that means, are we anthropomorphizing trees? No. I have to make this little sidekick that in the magazine Nature, I think 4 weeks ago, there was a statement from various scientists who said that most life forms are conscious, and that even singular cell organisms, and that sounds a little bit esoteric. No, that's hard science. So come back to trees. They are conscious. They are aware. We drink too much water, so we have to save the winter rainfalls which are stored in the soil for the next summer. Don't drink too much in spring. That's the main message. And we know that they are changing their behavior, not just for themselves, but through epigenetic effects. They can give this knowledge passed to the next generations through the seeds. And the next generation of trees is much more climate resilient. And that's not all. Sorry for that, Sharon.
No, it's so exciting. My mind is firing off in different directions. Carry on.
Most people think trees have to adapt. No, it's a forest ecosystem. It's a big family. And the family consists of trees, of course, different tree species, of birds, of deer, whatsoever. But the most important players are bacteria and fungi. And they are also learning. And fungi, for example, or go back one step back, on the genes of every one of us, trees, humans, whatsoever, just 1% says, that's Sharon, that's human, that's Sharon, or that's human, that's Peter, or that's a tree, that's a beech. It's 1% of the genes. And the rest, 99%, scientists decades ago thought are just rubbish, nothing worth. And now we know, no, that's information. That's information and that's experience stored from generations. And trees are not always able to remember well. And there comes the bacteria that we know nowadays. They can help them to remember. They can switch off and on genes and say, big guy, you have their knowledge on your genes. That means that you have a strategy against droughts. And this is on this part of your genes, and then they can switch it on, and together with those bacteria species, trees can become more resilient. And that is just one little story of those big forest knowledge with fungi producing hormones to make trees fitter and so on. So they are all adapting to climate change, helping each other to bring stability in this local community. And we benefit from this, of course.
Yes, we do. Gosh, so much to unpick on that. One of the things you said at the beginning of that, there is a level of consciousness. And maybe even if we just go back 5 years and people say, oh, you're thinking of trees as humans, you can't do that. Well, when you're not doing that, we're not being that arrogant to think that trees have to be like us, that we're imposing them on us. They are they, exactly. And they have their own consciousness. And the other thing that I unpick on that, it's the same with humans. It's the same with all life, that there is a knowledge code passed down through the reproductive system, which helps evolution. And so there's a curious thought about, should we therefore be taking seeds from a perhaps more drought-resistant version of beech that might be in a hotter climate and bring into say, Germany or the UK? Because I know that too is nuanced. What are your thoughts on that? Will we be doing ourselves a favour, or is there a risk?
Yeah, perhaps first, many foresters or politicians say, as you said, we need, they don't say we need the same species from southernmost regions, for example, but they say we need new species, not new tree species for example, like red oak or especially chestnut or cedar or whatsoever. That's done on big areas in Germany. And that is not fitting to the ecosystem. Red oak, for example, the leaves are poisonous for the soil life. They poison the soil life. But as you said, it is a good idea, as I thought, to bring the same species that we have here, beech, oak, or white fir, for example, which was also common in Middle and Western Europe, from southernmost regions. And that this is done in experiments. And they brought, for example, white fir from Macedonia to the Black Forest in Germany, because they say in Macedonia, it's warmer, it's drier. So this white fir trees or seeds should be adapted to this new climate, which we have now in Germany. And those seedlings didn't grow well. And then they said, why? It's not reasonable. And then they researched and found out it's the fungi. The fungi says no, that's not a white fir. And we say, no, but this is 100% genetically white fir. What the hell is going on there? But it's a human category to say that's a white fir. The fungi says, no. It's a foreign tree, and it's not I'm not adapted to this tree sugar, and I don't collaborate with this tree. I like the Black Forest white fir. So we see that it's our imagination from the world, and the fungi has a different imagination. The bacteria, as you said, trees are trees, humans are humans, bacteria are bacteria, and all those creatures have different imaginations of how the world works, and the fungi, perhaps, I don't know. And the Black Forest said, but I'm the one who makes the trees fitter. We don't need a tree. One for a trouble.
Wow.
And, I talked to the forest scientist just 2 weeks ago, and he said that the northernmost trees are better adapted to climate change than the southernmost, because all our trees, whether they are in Great Britain or in Germany or France or whatsoever, they have survived the ice age in southernmost regions and came back by birds and whatsoever. But they have traveled through Europe and through different ecosystems, different local climates, and they have stored all that in their genes. And now they remember. We have and it's in the power of trees. I bring the example of the 1,000-year-old oaks in Germany, which in the third year of a drought remembered, obviously, their Spanish origin, changed their leaf shapes to a Spanish oak type, and then recovered within this third year of a drought, which should make it worse. And now they are fit because they remembered their travel through Europe. So again, we think forest is very simple. We make this and then happen that. No. sorry, we don't know, round about, just an estimation, 90% of all forest creatures we don't know. And they are there,
Yes.
and they are important, and they play a role, and we don't know what they do. All we know is they are all working to make forests resilient, because they depend on tree sugar, on all those organic substance, and they fight their own fight. And luckily, again, they are going in the same direction that we love to see.
Absolutely. And that really brings me back to a good phrase that you use throughout the book, which has really captured my imagination, and the way many of us are thinking now, is that you and I are not really humans, we're holobionts, that everything is a holobiont. So, and I'll ask you to explain that in a moment, but I'm interested, as so many of us are, in wellness. And you are too, because I've read Our Little Farm. And the fact that we are, you know, we're not, you're not just Peter. You are a multitude of bacteria and fungi. And we are, in effect, an ecosystem walking around. And we have, you know, we think about our gut flora, our mouth flora, our skin flora, and how it all functions. And then you start thinking, well, everything is every living thing is a holobiont. And so it's entirely understandable. You know, we're seeing it through a human lens. Why doesn't the white fur from another area grow in this area? It's genetically the same, and the fungi's got a completely different way of being and a way of recognizing that, because we're all holobionts. It's a bit like saying, oh, this is London. It's buildings and it's roads. No, it's not. It's a multitude of people, and they're holobionts just to start with, and everything underground and everything flying around. I was walking through London by the River Thames yesterday. I think that we've spent too long being arrogant, looking at things from a macro lens, thinking we understand, we can classify. We are at, you say, and I totally agree, we're at one of the most exciting stages in history. So you'd obviously, with your great knowledge, maybe just like to expand a bit more about that, and what you feel are holobionts and how this is going to help us in the future.
It's perhaps we should be more grateful for things, because we know that we are like a little planet, and perhaps being aware of being a holobiont helps us to understand that we are still part of nature. It's not nature there and we are here. For example, most people fear bacteria, but without bacteria, we would die instantly, because they are very important parts of our body. But just to say that, it's not just about the microfauna, but also flora, but also fauna. It's we have, for example, we have little mites living in the skin of our face, and those hair follicle mites. They're around about 1.5 millimeters. They are not so small. Most people fear mites, and they are feeding on the grease of our follicles.
Yeah.
And a little detail. And they don't have eyes. They have adapted to our hormones, because if the melatonin level rises in the evening, they know, now it's going to be dark, it's nighttime, and we are laying down in the bed, and then they come out in our face, and there they mate every night. I don't know if everyone who is listening now likes to hear this detail, but
no.
If you're not alone in bed, and if you're it's a little bit boring, and you don't find your sleep, then perhaps you look in the face of your neighboring male or female, and look what's going on. It's very funny, but just to tell that we are holobionts, and we weren't aware of that, because we say we are a clean species, and all the other things is dirt, is hostile, whatsoever. No, we are part of it, and it's a very lovely feeling not to be alone on this planet. We always think, we are the crown, where perhaps there may be a planet in the next galaxy which is similar to Earth, and there is intelligent life. No, it's here. Intelligent life is here, surrounding us. And the only thing that would be my biggest wish for the future, personally, to have someone like a translator, a smell translator, electric signal translator, that I'm not I would like to be able to talk with trees, but to listening what they are talking about, what bacteria are talking about.
Yes.
That's latest research. We know that bacteria are talking amongst each other within colonies, one colony with another colony. There's communication on our skin, in our houses. Our homes are full of animals. No, most people don't like to hear this because we always think about mites in our bed. No, that are little scorpions or whatsoever. A city like London, for example, because you compared, it's a very good example to say that you can't replace London by just replacing the buildings, build it anywhere. No, it's about the people, the culture, and also about the animals. In the cities, there are, I would estimate, more than 1,000 times more animals than people. London and first is a place where animals live and just a few people.
And this is such an important concept, going back to trees and woodlands. So people say now, rather sadly, oh, we're going to plant a woodland. No, they're planting a bunch of trees that in time will become a woodland. Would you agree?
Exactly. So I'm often misunderstood because many people think I don't like trees to be planted. Of course, we need more woodlands. Especially in your country, you have a very low percentage of woodland coverage, but you have so many people engaged with tree planting or protecting old trees. Your wonderful oak olds are like libraries. They have stored all the knowledge you need to let local forest come back again. So their seeds, their acorns, for example, or whatsoever, are so important. And you're exactly right, because trees are holobionts, because the forest ecosystem is in big parts undiscovered so far. You can make the initial first step, but that's perfect. That's all we can do.
It's a good start. We're not in any way saying don't plant trees, folks, but it just said it's let's be honest about the complexity of this.
So it will take decades to become a real forest, and the next generation, which comes on their own way back, or other tree species which come into this planted forest by birds, by wind, whatsoever, they complete this forest. But it's a very first good step to have farmland, bring back into the forest coverage, and then let's start the next generation. And there's an old word that says the best time to have a tree planted was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. And I think we are now in the second best time. So we should plant trees as much as possible. A single tree, just to say that, in your garden can lower the temperature in summertime around about 1 to 6 degrees Celsius. So that's just about a single tree. And 2 trees are better, 3 trees are even more better, and a complete forest, local forest for your city, for your community would be a very, very good thing. So I'm very hopeful because it's all there. The knowledge is there. The emotional level is good. The people are in a good mood when they look on trees. So I think it's a good time now to have a bigger forest coming back.
If you're feeling rotten, maybe you've forgotten to listen to a tree lady talk.
I listened to a webinar yesterday on different types of planting medium for forest trees, and the gentleman had carried out a study comparing peat, which really we shouldn't be using, everybody agrees that, to various different types of natural forest soil that he'd composted from his own woodland with different measurable levels of fungi. And hey, guess what worked the best? The natural soil with the highest level of fungi. I felt it's a bit sad that we still are having those studies when it's pretty obvious, but hopefully things and nursery practices are waking up. But what are your thoughts? Because it's a bit of a controversial subject on, you don't talk about it in the book, so forgive me, on introducing commercial mycorrhizae as part of a tree planting program, let's say on agricultural field, which has been intensively farmed? What are the pros and cons of that?
On farmland for crops, for example.
So something that's denuded of mycorrhizae.
It may be helpful, but we don't know. It's like you should compose a watch. You have you have 10% of the wheels, and you don't know how to bring them together. So it's we are in the dark concerning this. So no one knows, because again, estimated 90% of fungi species is not detected so far. So we don't know what they do against with each other. For example, we have a new study in Germany. It's from last week, just a few days old. It's about the social life of wheat plants, and it's hard science. And the issue is about bringing more harvest to increase the harvest of wheat. It's nothing about esoteric or the hidden life of wheat or so. No, it's agriculture science to get higher harvest, and that means that you have to regard the social life of wheat plants, because if they are too egoistic, the harvest will be lower, because on the whole field, egoistic wheat decreases the harvest. So that means and that's just on one species, that's just on wheat. So if we introduce, that was your question, fungi whatsoever, we don't know, do they fit to this crop, or what about different fungi species? What about the bacteria working with the fungi, working with the crop? So you can experience with this, because farmland has nothing to do with nature. It's a heavily disturbed ecosystem. And of course we need it, because we need to have food. And I love not to have on every spot primary forest, because sometimes I'm hungry, and I'm happy that we have farmers, of course. Just to say that, beside that.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, no, I totally agree. Yes.
I think it's okay to make experience, to make it short in this, but I think it's not okay to believe that we restore something natural there. It's just another sort of farming, which is okay.
Yeah. I feel like the way of looking at that, I mean, my personal views at this time of speaking in 2023 are, there are certain environments which I think are probably quite denuded, and some of that is the work I do on London building sites, where I've got existing trees that I'm caring for their root system. I will then use enriched biochar, which has a mycorrhizae and worm casts, etc., and other beneficial additives, because I can see and smell the soil is denuded, maybe slightly contaminated, etc. And similarly with some intensive arable land, but where the soil is already less disturbed and less affected, I personally wouldn't, because to use a very crude analogy, we don't know if we're in effect putting, say, if you imagine the mycorrhizae species, because we don't know enough yet, which is glorious.
Exactly.
We might be putting, say, wildebeest into the tundra, to use a very poor analogy, and they will all die, or, what's the worst could happen? They could die, or they won't recognize each other. They won't recognize the tree, they won't recognize the soil. They'll have no bacteria mates to go, hey, come on, let's do something symbiotic. No, it wouldn't be symbiotic. There'd still be holobonts working side by side. Or
perhaps, or they disturb each other.
Or they cause harm. There's like a fungi war.
Exactly.
And they go, I'm big and powerful, I'm going to knock you guys out. And then it has a harm. So I don't think we really know enough yet.
And we have that in Germany, and no, not just in Germany. We have that also in your country. We have it all over the northern hemisphere with the ash dieback. That's a fungi, imported fungi, not by incident, but by purpose. But it's a fungi which kills most of the ashes, and which is also living on fallen ash leaves, but then attacking the ash tree. But a certain percentage survives it, and it wasn't long known what the reason were, and now we know that's one bacteria species of 10,000 bacteria species were living with those trees. One bacteria species changed its way of living and producing toxic substances against this fungi.
Fascinating.
So one bacteria species makes a difference. But sometimes the ecosystem can balance it, but yeah, it's always a little bit dangerous to import foreign species whatsoever. If it is fungi, if it is bacteria, we know on bigger species like with frogs in Australia, or even with brambly in North America, that they can cause big damage, or earthworms, North America. And here they are highly appreciated ecosystem engineers, and in North America, USA, Canada, they are destroying forest ecosystems. So it's always good not to make too much experience.
I just think we need to be humble that we're at this brink of an age of discovery, and consider wisely when and where to do things. So, but yes, we do need to plant trees, and urban tree planting is really important. And again, I go back to London and the marvellous arboretums that have been planted in the streets in London of different exotic species, just bringing beauty, colour, cooling, all the ecosystem services, and importantly, a sense of community. You know, you see you can measure how people are feeling better. You can see how communities are coming together. And I'm sort of working on a lot of social housing projects, and you can see how passionate people are about the trees and how they'll gather around it, etc. And it's about placemaking, community building. But hey, I'm digressing as always. And thank you for that really deep discussion about the biology, because I'm just excited about where we go next. But coming back to sort of not so great stuff, tell me about your concerns about commercial forestry, particularly in Germany.
German foresters are known to be the best foresters of the world, but in reality, it's a sad story, because they have implemented the plantation systems with the British emperors brought to India, to Canada, to Australia. So we have all over the world the German forest system, because at that time there was just the French and the German forest management system developed, and of course British people brought not French foresters to other parts of the world at that time. And so we have a big conifer plantation system as we see it in many hills in England or Scotland or wherever in your country, and as we have it here. We have had all over Central and Western Europe beech primary forest with dozens of tree species, and they are, for example, that we didn't have had any wildfire at that times. Nowadays we have big wildfires in Germany every year in the conifer plantations, because we have more than 50% of the forests made of conifer monocultures like pine or spruce. And we have in the moment a new paper gotten from Lower Saxony in Germany. It's a big part, and the State Forest Commission, which promises to bring the native tree species back, plants actually 2/3 of the new planted trees with non-native tree species, mostly of them conifer, Douglas fir, for example. So they are still in the bad loop of we have to produce timber. And you have in your country a big example of misuse of timber. That's the big Drax power company, which imports big amounts of timber from southwestern, southeastern USA. Big clear cuts are made there for producing pellets, transport them to European power plants. We have this issue in Germany too, and then produce renewable green power, which isn't true, because again, the best carbon you can save is in trees, and the biggest role trees don't play as a carbon sink, which they are, but again, they cool the local climate, they produce rain clouds. We are suffering exactly from that. We are not suffering from CO2. It's of course the the reason why the temperature is rising. That's very important to reduce the output of CO2, but the result is more higher temperature, more droughts, and that's exactly what trees can prevent. So it's always the best to let trees for the climate reasons in the forest, of course. And what we see all over Europe from the forest lobby, that they try to push the use of timber for energy purposes. And that means that's a wildfire in the power plant or in our local homes. It's the hidden wildfire. And so big parts of the forest burn in those in the houses and big factories. So that's what we are fighting for together with the NGOs, that the burning of timber should not be get subsidies. We're not telling the people don't burn timber in your home to have a little campfire, or in your stove, whatsoever. But we are against getting governmental subsidies, and that it is regarded as a carbon neutral heat source. No, that it isn't. It's the worst. It's even worse than coal burning. And that's a big issue, because all over Europe we have seen the biggest clear cuts ever in Germany, for example, biggest clear cuts ever, bigger than in Canada at the moment. It's incredible.
Yes, I'm glad you made that distinction between, say, locally grown timber or timber from trees which are, dead or dying, and then burning them in your log burner at home. Obviously, there's a clean air issue there. But yes, no, that's really, really interesting. And explain to the listener why clear cutting is so bad. So let's start with the soil.
Let's start with the soil. If you make a clear cut, then the whole soil life, which contains, it's the latest research, around about 60% of all species in the world are in the soil, and they are all depending on their local plant. And on in this case tree sugar or whatsoever. So you cut off their source of food, and then they die, and then they are away, and we don't know if they come back or how long it takes or whatsoever. Then they are away. So you have then earth, but you don't have soil. So it's dead soil afterwards, or very low settled with species. And so the next forest has big problems to come back. The soil will dry out. The surface temperature can go up to nearly 70 degrees Celsius. So you can boil eggs on this, but for trees it's very hard to survive a hot summer. We see in experiments from, for example, from southern France, that over such clear cuts, you get local high pressure areas, so that the clouds travel around. So you have less rain in these areas, you have higher temperatures, the surrounding forests are suffering because they cool the air down, they make it colder, which costs a lot of power. And with a nearby clear cut, they lose their cold air and have to make more efforts to get a little bit colder, so that weakens the surrounding forests. So it's a very bad idea to make clear cuts. Again, I'm not against timber use, but it's logical that a well-balanced forest, which has a lot of humidity in its soil, which has a cold local climate, can even in dry, hot summers produce timber, because it has its own resources. And if you make clear cuts, the timber production will decrease. In Germany, for example, we will, within the next 10 years, lose around about 50% of our forest coverage because of such processes. And then we have a big gap for around 50 years where we have almost no timber for construction purposes, because that were those spruce trees which are now dying in thousands of square kilometers in the moment. So it's also because of economical reasons, it would be the first step not to make any clear cuts anymore.
Interesting. And an alternative to that is continuous cover forestry. Is that something that's practiced in Germany?
We have some forest companies which are doing so, and that are the best examples that it's also economically the best way to manage forests. Yeah, we have that. For example, the city of Lübeck, very well known with a big forest, 50 square kilometers, which they managed since around about 30 years like that. very, very successful. And that's exactly what I would love to see. Let's say 30% of the forest, according to the Montreal Agreement last year, 30% of the forest protected, and 70, that's the majority of the forest, managed environmentally friendly in exactly this way. Just here and there, very carefully thinned for timber harvest, and then use the timber for long-lasting products like houses or books or furniture, or I see a lovely office with a wooden door.
Yes.
100% perfect. And in the moment, long-lasting, really long-lasting products are just 15% of the timber use. And the rest is for, let's say, advertising, paper or cartonnage, or in most cases, 50 to 70% direct burnt in whatsoever.
Okay, that's much higher than I thought, because I'm a great advocate of sustainable use of timber. And in fact, we interviewed the architect who's building the tallest wooden skyscraper in the world, Rocket and Tiger Lily in Switzerland, which is under construction now, I believe. And in the UK, there's quite a movement to use sustainably grown timber in construction. And Noel and I have moved, and we're privileged to live in a medieval house with, 600-year-old massive oak beams. I mean, it's just strong and amazing. Well, it seems to be strong. Other bits are falling off, which are the rubbish that other people have done in the last 50 years. But it's a fantastic material. It makes us feel good because it's in our DNA. We love to hold wood. We love wooden objects. They're beautiful. So there is a movement called Grown in Britain, which looks at sustainable use and good use of materials. So I'm an advocate of that. But I hadn't appreciated the scale of forests are being cut just for burning. So that's been really educational for me. And one of the other problems that has been in forestry, which in the UK is definitely improving, is lack of species diversity. Why do we need to plant lots of different species of trees to keep it healthy?
It's if you plant a lot of different tree species, we offer nature in the restoration process a lot of possibilities to develop in this or that direction, because we have the potential natural vegetation maps. It sounds a little bit complicated, where scientists make a guess what would be under the actual climate conditions of the natural forest. It's perhaps it's not that forest that were here 1,000 years ago, because we have the climate change now. We don't know in which direction the forest really develops. If we would have more oaks and less beech and more maple or whatsoever. So it's good to offer a wide variety of native tree species. We have around about 70 different native tree species to offer. And if you plant as much as possible within this starting plot, then nature can decide, okay, this time I take more, let's say white cherry or whatsoever. And then, but that's important. If nature chooses another direction, we say, but we would love to see more oaks and beech. Nature decide, no, I would like to have more aspen in the first step. Then we should nature leave and make its own decisions, because many people say, but we have planted that, we have to protect those trees, we have to care for them. No, after the initial planting, we should leave it up to nature in which direction the forest will go, because it's always the better decision, because it's adapting to climate change, is reacting to the local temperatures, and we don't know what the local native forest of the future will be. So it's a good idea to offer a wide variety of tree species in planting, and then let it up to nature what will be best for the future.
And then one of the problems we've seen, of course, is where a monoculture has been planted, and then you get a particular pest and disease just comes and wipes out the whole forest. And on a smaller scale, we see that with ornamental tree planting here in the UK, where a landscape architect has chosen just maybe 4 different species. Things are getting better now. But you can see a disease comes along, or let's say I went to a development I worked on recently in East London, and half the new planting is dead because they just planted silver birches. And obviously it's, sorry, I'm pulling a face, listener. I do apologise. This is audio. I love a silver birch, by the way. I'm not being speciesist, but there is we need that diversity because things are changing, and we need it for nature as well. I don't know if you have this in Germany, but here in the UK, we have a new regulation that's coming in called, it's a law, biodiversity net gain, whereby if a developer is building a large development, they have to demonstrate 10% of biodiversity net gain. So that's a series of metrics looked at by an ecologist, and then the green team work together and try and make things better. It's got its faults, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And one of the things that is driving is better management of existing woodlands, where that's incorporated in the master plan, and a wider variety of tree planting. So I think things like that are really useful. Do you think there's a place always for regulation and law to drive things in the right direction to get better species diversity, better protection of trees and forests? Do you think that can help us? Or do you think that it should be a ground-based movement and everybody should be on board?
I think we need both, of course. We see the same regulations differently made, as you told it, from London, for example, that people, for example, in official buildings, they need, for example, if you want to have a little grass or herbs in your garden, you have to use local seeds from special companies who produce that for the butterflies and other insects and so on. We see that, of course. But we don't need also the movement of the people to do so. What I love is, in addition to that we see that in several countries, meanwhile, but I think so far, not in the UK, not in Germany, that nature is regarded as a person which can go to court, for example. We see that in Ecuador, Yasuni National Park, they won against the oil companies, the state oil companies, which has to go out of the national park now within 1 year. It's Mother Nature, Pachamama, which is in their constitution and has a right to accuse whomsoever. We see that in New Zealand, we see that in France, but so far, as I know, we don't see it in UK, and we don't see it in Germany. What would be a big effort if it is made honestly. So it's a combination of all things, and we see all over the world good developments. Sometimes they are a little bit slow, and especially me, I'm a little bit impatient sometimes. It could be a little bit faster, but in general, it's going in the right direction. And I would like to have more good news, because we need all those horrible tipping points, which exist, of course, but there are also green tipping points. We say, wow, and I think we shortened before that, because for our green wave, as I love to say it, because you don't need the majority of people. If we have to wait until this point, I think it would take a very long time. No, but it's a certain amount, I think 10 or 20% of people who says it's time to act. And then it's like a tipping point, and the whole society goes in this direction. And I think we're shortly before that, because people hate to read every day about those heavy rainfalls in Greece, follow the wildfires there, or of California, British Columbia, whatsoever, or in the UK, of course. And so we like also to have good news. There are good news, and they should encourage us to make a good competition.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. It's time to act. And you do make a really good point. We can't wait for everybody to be on board.
Yeah.
We have to sort of do our thing. And I love this idea of Mother Nature standing in court in all her glory. Yeah. So that's very powerful. That's wonderful. So, Peter, it sounds like there's hope for the future. There's plenty of hope. And I just also want to just let readers know about our little farm. Do you want to just tell us very briefly about what you've learned and how this book will help people?
If we moved more than 30 years ago to the old Forester house, my wife and I, and the family, of course, our 2 children, we decided to produce as much as possible of our own food, and there we experience how hard it is. I think for 10% of your food, you need 1 hour per person per day. So that means if you want to be fully autark on yourself, then you need the whole day. Can't have a job. Then you're back to the medieval. So we didn't want to have that, but it was a very good experience to have that. And if you produce your own food, you see what you get offered in the supermarket, and you can judge it by smell, by taste, by the haptic, whatsoever. So you know what's behind. And so and I would appreciate that and suggest it for everyone. It doesn't matter if you just grow 1 tomato plant. Then you have perhaps for 2 or 3 salad portions your own tomatoes, and you value the tomatoes from the supermarket more than before. Perhaps you choose organic tomatoes afterwards because you know what you don't want to have in your food. So it's on this point a wonderful experience. It's a wonderful experience to live together with animals, because we learned so much from our goats, from our horses, from our chickens, from the bees, what their needs are. Our children were involved and grew up with all those knowledge, what's going on. So I think it's very important that everyone use any possibility that someone can get. As you mentioned, if you don't have a garden, if you don't have a balcony, if you have nothing to grow anything, then you can go out in your street and help planting trees and adopt a street tree, for example. You don't have to make it officially. I don't know if it is possible for the city government, but no one hinders you to say, that's my tree and I care for it, and I bring him sometimes, bring the tree some water, whatsoever. So make this connection to other beings. That's so important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. And finally, what's your dream scenario?
A dream scenario is that we make it with the climate change. And I'm convinced that we can do so, that we can look different on nature. And my dream would be that we changed our understanding, that we don't value nature just by pricing it. Say a tree is worth, let's say, 300 pounds because it collects so and so much carbon. No, that we value a tree because it's a living being, because it's wise and gives us so much emotional value. So it makes our life happier. My biggest wish is that we change it, like the state of Bhutan, who says we don't judge our society and measure the money that we get every year, but we measure our luck, our happiness. And they have a state happiness index, and they try to make it higher level. That would be my biggest wish. Everyone who is very old knows it's about love, it's about happiness, it's not about money. And so I love to see this direction appreciated much more.
Hear, hear. Peter, an absolute joy and privilege to speak to you again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Sharon, to be on your podcast show, and would be lucky to talk to you, let's say 5 or 10 years later, and then we may say, yeah, we predicted it, this green wave, and now it's rolling.
Yes, I'd love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It was really, I love it to talk to you.
So, you know what to do. Go out and buy them. The Power of Trees and Our Little Farm by Peter Wohlleben. Well, It's been another lovely episode. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too. And please join us again for the next time on Tree Lady Talks with your host, Sharon Durden-Hollenby.